3 months ago, I walked out of Callister Lyons' glass-walled empire, swearing I'd never let anyone make me feel small again. This morning, he stepped off a private elevator into my new office building, not as a visitor, but as the man who'd just acquired the entire company overnight. The champagne-colored marble beneath my feet suddenly felt like quicksand. Around me, Apex Innovations' open concept workspace hummed with the usual Thursday morning energy. Espresso machines hissing, keyboards clicking, the faint scent of imported leather from the executive lounge mixing with fresh gardenias someone had placed in crystal vases throughout the 10th floor. I'd been here exactly 19 days, long enough to believe I'd escaped, short enough that the wounds still ached. Callister stood near the reception desk in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than my annual salary, his steel blue eyes scanning the room with the predatory focus of someone cataloguing assets. His dark hair was shorter than I remembered, styled with the casual precision that only came from standing appointments at salons where they served you brandy while they worked. He looked like money, old money, new money, fuck you money, all of it wrapped in 6 feet, 2 inches of controlled power. When those eyes found mine across the polished limestone floor, something flickered in his expression. Recognition, surprise, and then something darker, something that made my pulse thunder in my ears, even as I lifted my chin and held his gaze. I'd spent 3 months rebuilding myself. 3 months learning that my worth wasn't determined by whether Callister Lyons noticed me in a room full of people. 3 months discovering that I could breathe without the constant weight of his impossible standards, his cutting remarks, his way of looking through me like I was just another piece of furniture in his domain. But here he was, and somehow, impossibly, I was right back where I'd started. Except this time, I knew exactly what kind of man stood before me. The universe, it seemed, had a cruel sense of humor. To everyone fighting to reclaim their power, to those who've walked away from toxicity, only to wonder if freedom was worth the cost. This story is for you. May you find the strength to stand in your truth, the courage to demand what you deserve, and the grace to recognize that sometimes the universe brings people back into our lives, not to break us again, but to show us how far we've come. If you're with Mr. Douglas Stories, kindly comment to rate the story from a scale of 1 to 10. 6 months earlier, my alarm would scream at 5:47 a.m., not 5:45, not 5:50, but 5:47. Because Callister Lyons demanded his senior team arrive by 7:15 a.m. sharp, and the commute from my studio apartment in Millbrook to the Lyons Capitol Tower in downtown Tarrington required exactly 83 minutes, door to door, if I wanted to stop for the coffee that made the day survivable. I wasn't senior team. I was a mid-level analyst in the acquisitions department, 3 rungs from the bottom and light years from the top. But Callister had a philosophy. If you wanted to rise, you matched the pace of those already at the summit. No exceptions. No excuses. So I matched it. Every morning for 2 years, I matched it. The Lyons Capitol building occupied an entire city block, all black glass and steel angles designed by some Danish architect who'd won awards for redefining corporate intimidation. The lobby alone could house a small aircraft. 40-foot ceilings, Brazilian walnut panels, a reception desk carved from a single piece of white marble that had been quarried in Tuscany and shipped in 3 pieces. I'd heard Callister tell that story to a visiting investor once, his voice carrying that particular tone of satisfaction he reserved for discussing things he owned. He owned a lot of things. My desk sat in the acquisitions bullpen, a glass-enclosed space on the 42nd floor where 30 of us worked in climate-controlled silence. Our monitors arranged so management could see every screen from the hallway. Efficiency through transparency, they called it. I called it surveillance theatre, but only in my head, and only after my third coffee. The first time Callister Lyons spoke directly to me was 4 months into my employment. I'd stayed until 2 a.m. finishing a valuation report on a pharmaceutical startup he was considering. The company's financials were a disaster. Creative accounting couldn't hide that they were 6 months from bankruptcy, but the underlying patents were solid, worth something in the right hands. I'd outlined a strategy for acquiring just the IP assets through a structured bankruptcy, saving Lyons Capital roughly $40 million compared to buying the company outright. I'd left the report on his assistant's desk with a note. Alternative approach for the Rexworth acquisition. Numbers on page 4. The next morning, he was standing at my cubicle when I arrived at 7:12 a.m. "You're the analyst who wrote this?" Not a question. He held my report, and I noticed he'd actually read it. There were notes in the margins, in sharp, precise handwriting. "Yes, sir. Rexworth's CEO is a friend of mine." His expression was unreadable. "You're suggesting I let his company fail?" My mouth went dry. I'd forgotten the first rule of corporate politics. Personal relationships trump smart business. "I'm suggesting you acquire what has value and let the rest settle according to market forces. But if there are other considerations, I can revise." "Your analysis is correct." He dropped the report on my desk. "We'll proceed as you outlined. I'm recommending you for the advanced analytics team." He walked away before I could respond, his Italian leather shoes silent on the polished floor, leaving behind only the faint scent of bergamot and cedar, some cologne that probably cost more per ounce than my entire cosmetics collection. I got the promotion. I also got Callister Lyons' direct attention, which I would later understand was both a gift and a curse. The advanced analytics team worked on the 47th floor, close enough to the C-suite that we could feel the altitude difference. The offices were smaller, but private, with actual doors and windows that overlooked Tarrington's skyline. My new supervisor was Patricia Wynne, a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s who'd been with Lyons Capital since its founding and seemed to view everyone under 40 with mild suspicion. "Mr. Lyons takes a personal interest in this team's work," she told me, during my first week. "That means excellence isn't optional. It's baseline. Understood?" I understood. What I didn't understand yet was what personal interest actually meant. It meant he reviewed our work directly. It meant 11 p.m. emails with questions about assumptions buried in footnote 17. It meant presentations where he'd drill into your methodology with surgical precision, finding the one weak assumption you'd hoped he'd miss. It meant being brilliant wasn't enough. You had to be bulletproof. I learned to be bulletproof. I also learned that Callister Lyons operated on a different plane than normal humans. He slept 4 hours a night. He read annual reports the way other people read novels. He could calculate compound returns in his head faster than I could pull them up on my calculator. He spoke 4 languages fluently and had built Lyons Capital from a mid-sized regional firm into a national powerhouse through a combination of ruthless strategy and uncanny timing. He was also, I discovered, utterly incapable of seeing the people around him as anything other than variables in his equations. "This is sloppy," He dropped my analysis of a tech merger on the conference table, hard enough that the sound echoed in the glass-walled room. You missed the regulatory implications in 3 separate jurisdictions. If I'd presented this to the board, we'd look incompetent. It was 9 p.m. on a Friday. I'd worked 16-hour days all week. The analysis was actually solid. I'd checked it 4 times. The regulatory issues he mentioned were edge cases that wouldn't affect the deal timeline. Sir, those regulations only apply if... I don't pay you to give me qualified answers. I pay you to be comprehensive. His eyes were cold in the fluorescent light. Redo it. On my desk Monday morning. There were 3 other people in that meeting. None of them looked at me. None of them said a word. I redid it. I worked all weekend, diving into regulatory minutiae that had a 0.3% chance of mattering. Monday morning at 6:55 a.m., the new report sat on his desk, comprehensive enough to choke on. He never mentioned it again. No acknowledgement, no feedback, just silence. That was the pattern. Impossible standards, public criticism, and silence where praise should have been. I told myself it was training, that he was pushing me to be better, that this was the price of working at the highest levels. But there were moments, small moments, that confused the narrative. Like the time I mentioned in passing that I was looking at apartments closer to the office, and he immediately had his real estate contact send me a list of buildings with corporate discounts. Or when I caught the flu and came in anyway, and he sent me home with his driver, saying, "Don't bring that plague into my office." Or the morning I arrived to find a new ergonomic chair at my desk after he'd apparently noticed me rubbing my back during a late meeting. These moments felt like glimpses of someone else beneath the armor, someone capable of noticing, of caring, maybe. But then he'd eviscerate someone's presentation in a morning meeting or send a 2 a.m. email demanding answers to questions that could have waited or pass me in the hallway without a glance. And I'd remember Callister Lyons didn't see people. He saw assets and liabilities, tools and obstacles. And I was tired of being a tool. The breaking point came on a Tuesday. I'd been working on the Meridian acquisition for 3 months, a complicated deal involving a family-owned manufacturing company with sentimental owners and tangled succession issues. I'd built relationships with the family, learned their concerns, structured an offer that gave them financial security while preserving their legacy. It was delicate work, the kind that required patience and emotional intelligence. Callister called me into his office at 4 p.m. "The Meridian deal is moving too slowly." He didn't look up from his computer. "I'm assigning it to Rutherford." Justin Rutherford was a shark in an expensive suit who thought corporate acquisitions were blood sport. He'd closed the deal by threatening and intimidating until the family caved. "Sir, the family needs time. The family needs to make a decision. Rutherford will expedite that." He finally looked at me, and his expression was utterly neutral. "You're too emotionally invested. It's affecting your judgment." "I'm building trust. That's not emotional investment. That's strategy." "It's a waste of time." He turned back to his screen. "You're reassigned to the Halcyon analysis. Report to Patricia." Just like that. 3 months of work, handed off because I'd committed the sin of treating people like people. I stood there for a moment, waiting for something. An acknowledgement of the work I'd done. A thank you. Anything. He started typing, and I realized I'd been dismissed. I walked out of his office. through the executive suite with its hushed carpet and original artwork, past the floor-to-ceiling windows that showcased Tarrington, spreading out below like a kingdom. I rode the elevator down 47 floors, each one feeling like another weight added to my chest. In the lobby, I paused by those Brazilian walnut panels and let myself imagine, just for a moment, what it would feel like to walk out those doors and never come back. The fantasy was intoxicating, but I had rent, student loans, a career trajectory that depended on the Lyons capital name on my resume. I had all the practical reasons that kept people tethered to soul-crushing jobs, so I went back upstairs. But something had shifted. For the first time in 2 years, I'd let myself imagine the exit. And once you've imagined it, it's only a matter of time before you take it. Chapter 2. The collision. The final straw wasn't dramatic. That's what surprised me most. No screaming match, no public humiliation, no career-ending disaster. Just one more small cut that finally hit bone. It happened during a Wednesday morning meeting in Conference Room A, the massive glass box on the 45th floor where Callister held his weekly strategic reviews. 20 people around an oval table made of reclaimed ship timber, each of us with our reports printed and bound. Coffee service from that boutique roaster in Portland that he preferred. The morning sun streaming through windows that offered a view all the way to the mountains on clear days. I was presenting preliminary findings on a retail acquisition. Solid work, conservative projections, nothing flashy, nothing risky. Exactly the kind of analysis that should have been approved with minimal discussion. Your market analysis assumes consistent foot traffic. Callister's voice cut across my third slide. What's your hedge against the secular decline in physical retail? The company has been building out their online presence. How many years until online revenue exceeds in-store? Based on current growth rates, approximately isn't an answer, it's a guess. He leaned back in his chair, and I watched several people around the table suddenly find their notes very interesting. You're recommending we invest 40 million based on assumptions you can't quantify. That's not analysis. That's optimism. My jaw tightened. The data shows you didn't do the work. He said it flatly, like he was commenting on the weather. Quantify the online trajectory or kill the deal. Next presentation. He moved on. Just like that. Dismissed my 3 weeks of work in front of 20 colleagues without a second thought. I sat there, face burning, while someone else presented the analysis on a healthcare acquisition. My hands were shaking slightly, so I pressed them flat against the table. No one looked at me. No one ever looked at the person Callister cut down. It was like bearing witness to an execution. You kept your head down and felt grateful it wasn't you. After the meeting, I went back to my office and stared at my computer screen for 20 minutes without seeing it. The analysis was sound. The online revenue question was valid, sure, but it wasn't a deal killer. Callister had to know that. This wasn't about the data. This was about reminding everyone in that room who held the power. And I was tired of being the example. I opened my email and found the message I'd been ignoring for 2 weeks. Recruiter from Apex Innovations reaching out about a senior analyst position. I'd deleted it the first time. Apex was smaller, less prestigious, the kind of company that Lyons Capital probably ate for breakfast. Not a career move, more like a career sidestep. But they were offering 30K more than I currently made, and the job description mentioned collaborative environment 3 times. I hit reply before I could talk myself out of it. The interview process was shockingly normal. 3 rounds, all conducted with basic human courtesy. They asked about my work, listened to my answers, and seemed genuinely interested in what I could bring to the company. The hiring manager, a woman named Fiona Carstairs, actually smiled during our conversation. "We're growing fast," she told me during the final interview. "The owner just secured funding for a major expansion. We need people who can handle complex analysis, but also work in teams. From what I've seen, you're exactly what we're looking for." "Who's the owner?" I asked, mostly out of courtesy. "We're still in stealth mode on that, part of the acquisition structure. But I can tell you he's brilliant, well-funded, and committed to building something special." She offered me the job the next day. 20% raise, better title, actual work-life balance. I accepted before I'd even figured out how to quit. Resigning from Lyons Capital required 2 weeks' notice and an exit interview with HR. I drafted my resignation letter in careful professional language, thanking them for the opportunity while citing personal career goals as my reason for leaving. I printed it on a Monday morning at 7:05 a.m. before the office filled up. Then I carried it up to the 48th floor to Callister's executive assistant's desk. "I need to deliver this to Mr. Lyons directly," I told Maria, who'd been guarding his calendar for 6 years and knew how to read between lines. She glanced at the envelope. "He's in a meeting until 9. "I'll wait." I sat in one of the leather chairs outside his office for an hour and 40 minutes. Long enough to doubt myself a dozen times. Long enough to rehearse what I'd say if he asked me to stay. Long enough to realize he probably wouldn't ask. When he finally emerged from his meeting, 2 board members trailing behind him, all of them in suits that cost more than most people's cars, he saw me immediately. "I need 5 minutes," I said, standing. He glanced at his watch. "I have a call at 5 minutes." I held out the envelope. Something in my expression must have registered, because he took it, waved the board members on, and gestured me into his office. I'd been in this space hundreds of times, but I'd never really looked at it. Not like this. Not as someone leaving. The office occupied a corner of the building, floor-to-ceiling windows on 2 sides offering views that made Tarrington look like a toy city. The furniture was understated but exquisite. A desk of black walnut, chairs upholstered in butter-soft leather, abstract art on the walls that was probably worth more than my parents' house. Everything precise, everything controlled, a reflection of the man who occupied it. Callister opened the envelope and read my letter in silence. His expression didn't change. "You're resigning." Statement, not question. "Yes." "Why?" I'd prepared a professional answer. Something vague about growth opportunities and career trajectory. But standing there, in his perfectly controlled space, something in me snapped. "Because I'm tired of being invisible unless I'm making a mistake." His eyes sharpened. "Explain." "You don't see people, Callister. You see performance metrics. When we exceed your expectations, silence. When we fall short, even slightly, public criticism. I've worked here for 2 years. In that time, you've never once acknowledged good work. But you've criticized me in front of colleagues, questioned my judgment, and dismissed my efforts without consideration. I'm done." He set the letter down carefully, his movements controlled. "You want praise, a gold star every time you do your job?" I want to be seen as a human being. This is business, not therapy. And that's exactly why I'm leaving. I kept my voice level. You've built something remarkable here, but you've done it by treating people like disposable tools. I refuse to be disposable anymore. For a long moment, he just looked at me. Something flickered across his face. Surprise, maybe, or calculation. I couldn't read it. You have another offer? Again, not a question. Yes. Where? That's not relevant. His jaw tightened slightly. I could match any offer, exceed it. This isn't about money. Everything is about money. Not to me. Not anymore. I turned toward the door. I'll finish my 2 weeks. All my projects will be documented and transferred properly. Thank you for the opportunity. I was halfway to the door when his voice stopped me. You're making a mistake. I looked back. He was standing now, backlit by those enormous windows, and for just a second, he looked less like a corporate titan and more like a man who'd been caught off guard. Maybe, I said, but it's my mistake to make. I walked out before he could respond. The next 2 weeks were surreal. I wrapped up projects, trained my replacement, and endured the awkward goodbyes of colleagues who seemed torn between congratulating me and worrying about their own job security. Callister didn't speak to me again. I'd see him occasionally, in the halls or across the floor, but he never approached, never acknowledged my presence. It was like I'd already disappeared. On my last day, I packed my personal items into a single box. Not much accumulated in 2 years, when you barely had time to personalize your space. I was carrying it to the elevator when I passed conference room A and saw Callister through the glass. Alone, staring out at the city. He looked tired. For the first time since I'd known him, Callister Lyons looked genuinely tired. I almost stopped, almost went in to say something, goodbye, good luck, maybe even thank you for the impossible standards that has taught me I was capable of more than I'd believed. But then I remembered that Wednesday morning meeting, the dismissal, the casual cruelty. I kept walking. Apex Innovations occupied a modern building in Riverside, Tarrington's tech district. Smaller than Lyons Capital, but newer, with an open floor plan and a staff who actually smiled at each other. My first day was orientation, company history, benefits overview, team introductions. Everyone was friendly, no one screamed. The coffee was mediocre, but free. It felt like being released from prison. Fiona Carstairs gave me a tour of the office, introducing me to my new team. 8 analysts and 2 project managers, who all seemed genuinely happy to have me. We're excited about the expansion, she told me as we walked through the space. The new owner has big plans, some restructuring, new projects, major capital investment. It's an exciting time to be here. When do we meet the owner? I asked. Soon. He's been handling the transition details, but he'll be making an announcement next week. I settled into my new desk, a standing desk, an upgrade from Lyons Capital, and spent my first week getting up to speed on Apex's current projects. The work was interesting, the pace was reasonable, and I left the office at 5:30 p.m., feeling accomplished rather than drained. For the first time in 2 years, I remembered what it felt like to enjoy my job. I was in the kitchen on Thursday morning, pouring coffee and chatting with a coworker about a project, when I heard it, a shift in the office energy, conversation dropping to whispers, people moving toward the main workspace. What's going on? I asked. The owner's here, my coworker said, craning to see. First time he's visiting in person. Something cold slid down my spine, some instinct that I didn't want to name. I followed the crowd toward the reception area, coffee cup still in my hand, and there he was. Callister Lyons, standing beside Fiona Carstairs, wearing a different suit, but the same expression of controlled assessment I'd seen 1,000 times. His eyes swept the gathered staff with that predatory focus, cataloguing, calculating, and then they found me. For 3 full seconds, the world stopped. I watched recognition hit him, watched surprise flicker across his face before he controlled it, watched something else surface, something that looked almost like satisfaction. Fiona was talking. Proud to introduce our new owner, Callister Lyons of Lyons Capital. He acquired Apex Innovations as part of his technology sector expansion and will be taking an active role in our strategic direction. Her voice faded to white noise. Callister's eyes never left mine, and I understood, in that crystallizing moment of horror, that I hadn't escaped at all. I'd just made it more interesting for him. I seriously considered walking out right then, just turning around, grabbing my bag, and leaving before this situation became real. But the eyes of 40 co-workers were on me. On us, really, as people noticed the way Callister was looking at me. And I'd spent 2 years learning to control my expressions in front of him. So I lifted my chin, took a sip of my coffee with a hand that barely trembled, and watched him transform back into the polished CEO presenting to his new acquisition. I've been impressed with Apex's work in the tech sector, he was saying, his voice carrying that same authoritative tone I knew so well. Your team has built something valuable here. My intention isn't to disrupt what's working, but to provide the capital and strategic resources to accelerate your growth. Professional, reasonable. The Callister Lyons who could charm investors and board members with equal ease. Not the man who'd eviscerated my analysis in front of 20 colleagues. Not the man I'd walked away from. The announcement continued for another 10 minutes. Plans for expansion, new project pipelines, assurances about job security. Fiona looked thrilled. My new co-workers looked cautiously optimistic. And I stood there calculating how fast I could update my resume. When the announcement ended, people broke into small groups, some approaching Callister with questions, others retreating to their desks to process this development. I turned to slip away in the chaos. A word, Callister's voice behind me, not loud, but commanding enough that several people glanced over. I turned slowly. He was standing closer than necessary, and I caught that familiar scent of bergamot and cedar. Mr. Lyons. My office. 5 minutes. He said it like nothing had changed, like he still had the right to summon me. I wasn't aware you had an office here yet. Corner suite, 10th floor. They're setting it up now. A pause. 5 minutes. Don't make me come find you. He walked away before I could argue, leaving me standing there with what was probably a mutinous expression on my face. 3 co-workers immediately materialized around me. Oh my God, you know him? The question came from Priya, one of the analysts I'd been working with. I used to work at Lyons Capital. What's he like? This from James, a project manager. I considered my answer carefully. Demanding, brilliant, exacting, and not someone you want to cross. But you left. Priya's eyes were bright with curiosity. Why leave to come here if... I left before he bought the company. I looked toward the elevators. And now I need to go have a conversation I really don't want to have. I took the stairs. Petty maybe, but it gave me an extra 3 minutes to prepare. The 10th floor was quieter, executive territory, with actual offices instead of the open workspace below. The corner suite had Callister's name already on the door. That was fast. And through the glass walls, I could see him on his phone, pacing. I knocked. He gestured me in without breaking his conversation. I don't care what the timeline was supposed to be. Move it up. Yes, next week. Handle it. He hung up and turned to face me. Close the door. I'd rather not. Close the door, or I'll have this conversation in the middle of the floor where everyone can hear it. I closed the door. For a long moment, we just stared at each other. I'd forgotten how intense his focus could be, how it felt to have those steel blue eyes examining you, like a puzzle he was determined to solve. When did you buy this company? I asked, finally. The deal closed 3 days before you started. My stomach dropped. You knew I was here. I knew there was a new senior analyst from Lyons Capital. I didn't know it was you until I reviewed the personnel files last night. He leaned against the desk, arms crossed. Imagine my surprise. You could have said something, called me, warned me. Why? You wanted out of Lyons Capital. You got out. This is just a coincidence. There's no such thing as coincidence with you. Something that might have been amusement flickered across his face. True, but in this case, actually, honest coincidence. I bought Apex because the technology portfolio was undervalued and the team was solid. You weren't a factor in the decision. Am I supposed to be reassured by that? You're supposed to do your job. He pushed off the desk, closing some of the distance between us. You're a good analyst, maybe great, if you stop letting emotions cloud your judgment. Apex needs that. I need that. I don't work for you anymore. Actually, you do. I own this company. That makes me your boss. Again. He tilted his head slightly. Unless you're planning to run away a second time. The challenge in his voice sparked something hot and defiant in my chest. I didn't run away. I made a professional decision to leave a toxic work environment. Toxic. He repeated the word like he was testing it. Because I held you to high standards? Because you treated people like they're disposable? And yet here you are, in a company I now own, doing the same work you were doing before, just for 20% more money. He smiled, and it wasn't kind. So, who's really disposable? The words hit like a slap. I felt my face, heat, anger and humiliation, warring in my chest. I'm not doing this. I'll finish the week, give proper notice, and find another position. I turned towards the door. You'll do nothing of the sort. His voice stopped me. You signed a contract, 1 year minimum, with a non-compete clause that prevents you from working in acquisitions anywhere in Tarrington if you leave before the term is up. I checked. I turned back slowly. You're going to hold me to that? I'm going to hold everyone to their contracts. Why should you be different? He straightened his cuffs, the gesture casual. Unless you're planning to leave Tarrington, though I notice your family is here. Your friends, your whole life, really. This is insane. This is business. You work here. I own here. We're both adults. We can manage that professionally. Professionally? I laughed, and it sounded bitter even to my ears. You don't even know what that word means. His expression hardened. Careful. Or what? You'll fire me? Please. That would solve both our problems. I'm not going to fire you. I'm going to make you remember why you were good at Lyons Capital before you decided that feeling appreciated was more important than excellence. He moved closer, and I hated that I had to tilt my head back to maintain eye contact. You wanted out? Fine, you got out. But this is where you landed, and I don't accept half measures from my team. You're capable of brilliant work, so do brilliant work. Prove that leaving wasn't just running away from something hard. I wasn't running, then show me. We stood there, the air between us crackling with tension. Part of me wanted to throw something at him. Part of me wanted to walk out and let the lawyers sort out the contract. And a very small, very unwelcome part of me wanted to prove he was wrong about me. That last part was what worried me most. I need to get back to work, I said finally. Team meeting, tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. Conference room B. Don't be late. I'm never late. No, he agreed, his voice softening almost imperceptibly. You never were. I left before he could say anything else. The rest of the day passed in a blur. I tried to focus on work, but every time I looked up, I was aware of where he was in the building. When he toured the office, when he met with department heads, when he finally left at 6 p.m., the tension in my shoulders eased slightly. Priya found me at my desk at 6:30. Drinks? Several of us are processing this development with alcohol. I should... Come on. You clearly need it more than any of us. I did need it, so I joined them. We ended up at a wine bar 3 blocks from the office. 5 of us crammed into a booth, everyone talking over each other. He's younger than I expected, Priya said. I mean, I knew he was young for what he's accomplished, but seeing him in person... He's 34, I said, then cursed myself for revealing I knew that. How long did you work for him? 2 years. And it was that bad? James asked. I considered sugarcoating it, but these people would be working under Callister now. They deserved to know what they were in for. He's brilliant, I said carefully. Strategic mind like nobody I've ever met. He can see connections other people miss, predict market movements, structure deals that seem impossible. If you want to learn, he's the best teacher you'll ever have. But, Priya prompted, but he doesn't do praise, doesn't do work-life balance, doesn't really do human connection. He expects perfection, and when you deliver it, that's just baseline. The only time he notices you is when you screw up, and he will find the screw-ups, always. Sounds exhausting, someone murmured. It is, but it's also, I paused, searching for words. It's intoxicating. When you're in his orbit, everything else feels small. The projects, the deals, the sheer scale of what he does. It makes you feel like you're part of something important. And on the rare occasions when he does acknowledge good work, even just a nod or a brief, well done, it feels like winning an Olympic medal. So why'd you leave? Because I realized I was trying to earn approval from someone who's fundamentally incapable of giving it, and I decided I deserved better. And now he's here. Priya raised her glass. To cosmic irony. We all drank to that. I got home around 9 p.m., changed into comfortable clothes, and tried not to think about the fact that Callister Lyons was back in my life. I failed spectacularly. Instead, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, remembering every interaction from the day, analyzing every word like I was reviewing a contract for loopholes. I bought Apex because the technology portfolio was undervalued and the team was solid. You weren't a factor in the decision. Did I believe that? Callister didn't do things by accident, but also Apex was exactly the kind of acquisition that made sense for his portfolio, and he couldn't have known I'd applied here. I'd done that after I'd already quit, so maybe it really was coincidence. which meant I had a year of working under Callister Lyons. Again, the prospect filled me with dread, and I had to admit something else, something that felt uncomfortably like anticipation. I told that feeling to shut up and go away. The team meeting started at exactly 8:00 a.m. Callister was already in conference room B when I arrived at 7:58, along with Fiona and the department heads. He glanced up when I entered, a flicker of something crossing his face, before he returned to his tablet. "Now that we're all here," he said, not bothering with pleasantries, "let's discuss the next 6 months." What followed was a masterclass in strategic planning. Callister outlined his vision for Apex: expansion into 3 new markets, partnerships with 2 major tech firms, and a complete overhaul of their project management systems. He spoke with total confidence, backed by data and projections he'd clearly memorized, anticipating questions before they were asked. It was impressive. Damn him, it was impressive. "For this to work, we need to move fast," he continued. "That means longer hours, tighter deadlines, higher standards. I know this company has operated with a certain culture." His eyes found mine briefly. "But that culture needs to evolve if we're going to compete at the level I'm targeting." Fiona looked slightly stricken. "We pride ourselves on work-life balance. And you'll keep it, within reason. I'm not asking anyone to sacrifice their personal lives. I'm asking for excellence during work hours. Focused, efficient excellence." He pulled up a slide, showing the new project timeline. "Each of you will be assigned to one of 3 strategic initiatives. You'll have autonomy in execution, but weekly check-ins with me directly." The meeting continued for another hour. By the end, everyone looked energized and slightly terrified, the usual effect Callister had on teams. As people filed out, Callister called after me, "Stay back. Here we go again." When the room cleared, he gestured to a chair. "Sit." "I prefer to stand." "Sit, please." The addition of "please" surprised me enough that I sat. He took the chair across from me, not at the head of the table. Closer, more intimate than a typical boss-employee configuration. "You did good work yesterday," he said. I blinked. "Excuse me?" "The preliminary analysis on the cloud tech partnership. I reviewed it last night. Solid methodology, comprehensive risk assessment. Good work." I stared at him. Callister Lyons had just complimented my work. Directly, without qualification. "Are you feeling okay?" I asked. Something that might have been a smile tugged at his mouth. "I'm trying something new. Feedback. I'm told I'm not good at it." "You're told correctly." "So I'm told." He leaned back. "You were right. About some things you said when you quit. Not all of it. You're still too emotional about work. But some of it. I don't acknowledge good work the way I should." "Is this an apology?" "It's an acknowledgement. There's a difference." He straightened his cuffs. A tell I'd learned meant he was uncomfortable. "I need you at your best here. That means not repeating the mistakes I made at Lyons Capital." "Mistakes? You're admitting you made mistakes." "Don't sound so shocked. I'm not perfect." "You could have fooled me." "Yes, well, apparently I fooled a lot of people." He stood, and the moment of vulnerability, if that's what it was, seemed to close. "You're leading the market analysis for the Healthcare Tech Initiative. It's a major project. I'm counting on you to deliver." "Healthcare tech? That's outside my usual scope?" "Which is why I'm assigning it to you. You're capable of more than you've been asked to do. Time to prove it." He left before I could process what had just happened. I sat there alone in the conference room, my mind spinning. Callister had complimented me, admitted he made mistakes, trusted me with a major project outside my comfort zone. Who was this man, and what had he done with my former boss? The healthcare tech project consumed the next 2 weeks. I dove into research, built financial models, interviewed industry contacts, and constructed an analysis that was, if I did say so myself, comprehensive and innovative. I worked late several nights, not because Callister demanded it, but because I was genuinely interested in the challenge. And that was the trap, wasn't it? This was exactly what I'd left Lyons Capital to avoid, being so consumed by work that nothing else existed. But somehow, it felt different here. At Apex, I had autonomy, team support, and, surprisingly, regular feedback from Callister. He'd stop by my desk every few days with questions or observations, always professional, usually brief, but present in a way he'd never been at Lyons Capital, like he was making an effort to be human. It was deeply unsettling. "You're doing it again," Priya said one afternoon, appearing at my desk with coffee. "Doing what?" "Getting that intense focus thing. The thing where you forget to eat and lose track of time." She set the coffee down. "I recognize it because I do it too. But you're supposed to be modeling healthy work habits for those of us who don't have your discipline. I'm on a deadline that you set for yourself. Callister gave you 3 weeks. You're trying to finish in 2. She perched on the edge of my desk. "Can I ask you something personal? Can I stop you? Why do you push so hard, even when you don't have to?" I thought about how to answer that. Because proving I can is better than wondering if I could have. That's either very wise or very sad. Probably both. She left, and I returned to my analysis. But her question lingered. The truth was, part of me was trying to prove something to Callister. That walking away from him had made me better, not weaker. That I didn't need his impossible standards to do excellent work. That I could exceed his expectations without his constant pressure. Which meant, in a twisted way, I was still letting him define my worth. I hated that realization. The presentation was scheduled for a Friday afternoon. Me, Callister, Fiona, and 2 members of Apex's board. I'd rehearsed it a dozen times, stress-tested every assumption, and prepared answers for every conceivable question. I was ready. The presentation went perfectly. I walked them through the market analysis, laid out the strategic opportunities, and quantified the risks with precision. When I finished, there was a moment of silence. The good kind, where people are actually thinking instead of scrambling for polite responses. "This is excellent work," one board member said. "Thorough, well-reasoned, and actionable." Fiona looked thrilled. "I agree. This gives us a real roadmap." I looked at Callister. His expression was neutral, but I knew him well enough now to see the slight tension around his eyes that meant he was processing intensely. "Questions?" I prompted. He leaned forward. "Page 17. You assume regulatory approval within 18 months. Walk me through that." Of course. Of course he'd found the one assumption that required the most nuanced explanation. I did. For 15 minutes, we went back and forth on regulatory timelines, international compliance variations, and contingency planning. It wasn't adversarial, more like 2 chess players testing each other's strategy. By the end, I'd defended every projection, and he'd pushed me to strengthen arguments I hadn't even realized were weak. "Good," he said finally. "This works. We'll move. Forward." The board members left. Fiona congratulated me and headed out, and then it was just Callister and me in the conference room. "You've improved," he said. "I was always this good. You just never noticed." "I noticed." He started gathering his materials. "I just didn't say so. That was a mistake." "Why are you being nice to me?" The question came out harsher than I intended. He looked up, surprised. "I'm not being nice. I'm being fair." "You're never fair. You're exacting and demanding and impossible to please. So what changed?" He set his tablet down slowly. "You want honesty?" "Always." "You left, and that—" He paused, seeming to choose words carefully. "Made me reconsider some things." "What things?" Whether being right all the time was worth driving away the people who actually challenged me to be better. He met my eyes. "You were one of 3 people at Lyons Capital who would argue with me when you thought I was wrong. After you left, Patricia retired, and Chen took a job in Singapore. That left me with a team of yes men and people too afraid to speak up. I didn't realize how much I relied on that pushback until it was gone. I didn't know what to say. This was more vulnerability than I'd ever seen from him. "So this is a business decision," I said finally. "Keeping me happy, so I'll keep arguing with you." "Partially." He smiled slightly. "Also, I don't want you to quit again. You're valuable, and I'm trying to be less of an ass about showing people they're valuable." "Trying. It's a work in progress." Despite myself, I smiled. "I've noticed." "Progress, then." He picked up his tablet. "Good work today. Take the weekend. You've earned it." He left, and I stayed in the conference room, processing what had just happened. Callister Lyons had just admitted I was valuable, that losing me had affected him, that he was actively trying to change. None of this made sense. But then again, nothing about this situation made sense anymore. The invitation arrived on Monday morning. Lyons Capital Annual Charity Gala, benefiting technology education initiatives. October 14th, 7 p.m., the Ashbourne Hotel. I stared at it, recognition sinking in. I'd heard about these galas during my time at Lyons Capital, but had never attended. They were for senior executives and major clients, not mid-level analysts. Fiona appeared at my desk. "Did you get the invitation?" "I'm confused. Why am I invited?" "Callister specifically requested you attend. Something about Apex's new prominence in his portfolio. He wants key team members visible." She smiled. "It's black tie. Company will cover a clothing allowance if you need it." "Of course it's black tie." After she left, I found the email from Callister. "Need you at the gala. Clients will want to hear about the healthcare tech initiative directly from the lead analyst. Bring someone if you want." CL. Bring someone. As if I had someone to bring. My dating life had been non-existent during the Lyons Capital years and hadn't improved much since. I thought about declining. Galas weren't my scene. I'd rather do spreadsheets than small talk. But this was technically work, and maybe a small part of me was curious to see Callister in that environment. The next week passed in a blur of preparation, both for the gala and for an upcoming deadline on another project. By Thursday, I'd found a dress. Deep emerald silk, elegant but not trying too hard, with a neckline that was professional enough while still being evening appropriate. The store had assured me it was perfect. I felt ridiculous in it. Saturday evening arrived too quickly. I did my hair and makeup with more care than I'd taken in months, slipped on the dress, and stared at myself in the mirror. The person looking back seemed unfamiliar. Polished, confident, like someone who belonged at charity galas. The illusion would probably shatter the moment I opened my mouth. The Ashbourne was Tarrington's premier luxury hotel, all Art Deco elegance and old money. The ballroom glittered with crystal chandeliers, silk-draped tables, and enough flowers to stock a garden centre. I stepped inside and immediately felt underdressed, despite the designer dress. Everyone here looked like they bought companies for fun. "You made it!" Callister materialized beside me, and I jumped slightly. He was in a tuxedo, custom, obviously, fitting him like it had been painted on. He looked dangerous. That was the only word for it. "You requested I attend," I said. I assumed that meant it wasn't optional. Nothing is truly optional, but I'm glad you came. His eyes travelled over me, and something flickered in his expression. "You look different." That's what happens when you're not in business casual. "It's not the dress." He seemed to be studying me. "You look comfortable, like you belong here." "I don't belong here. These people probably spend more on wine than I make in a month." "Some of them, yes, but you've earned your place in this room as much as anyone." He offered his arm. "Come on, I'll introduce you around." I hesitated, then took his arm. His suit jacket was warm, and I could feel the strength in his arm beneath it. The next hour was a masterclass in networking. Callister introduced me to investors, tech CEOs, and philanthropists, each time framing my work at Apex in terms that made me sound far more impressive than I felt. He stayed close the entire time, occasionally interjecting when conversations veered into territory where I'd be lost, creating space for me to shine when discussing my actual expertise. It was strange, protective almost, like he was deliberately showcasing me. "You're good at this," I murmured during a break in conversation. "At what?" "Making people feel important." "I'm making them recognize your value. There's a difference." He guided me toward the bar. "Besides, you are important. The healthcare tech analysis is getting attention. Two of the people I introduced you to are already asking about partnering with Apex because of your work." "Because of your reputation?" "Because of the work. Give yourself credit." He ordered drinks. Whiskey for him, wine for me, without asking. He'd remembered my preference. "You've always undersold yourself. It's annoying." "I'm realistic." "You're self-protective. Also annoying." Before I could respond, a voice cut through the ambient conversation. "Callister, there you are." I turned to see a woman approaching, mid-30s, stunning in a red dress that probably cost more than my car, with the kind of confidence that came from never hearing the word no. Callister's expression didn't change, but I felt him tense slightly beside me. "Vivienne," he said, neutrally. I recognized the name. Vivienne Hart, tech investor and rumoured ex of Callister's from years ago. I'd heard gossip at Lyons Capital, but never paid much attention. "I heard you acquired Apex Innovations." Her smile was sharp. "Still collecting companies like trading cards?" "It's what I do." And who's this?" She turned to me, her eyes assessing in a way that made me feel like I'd been priced and found wanting. "This is my lead analyst on the healthcare tech initiative," Callister said, before I could introduce myself. "Brilliant work. Groundbreaking, really." I blinked at the praise. Vivienne noticed. "Lead analyst. How nice." Her tone suggested it was anything but. Callister always did have a talent for finding hidden gems. "Not hidden," he said coolly, "just undervalued by people who couldn't recognize quality." The tension between them was thick enough to cut. I suddenly understood. This wasn't just an ex. This was someone who'd hurt him. Well, I won't keep you. Vivienne's smile didn't reach her eyes. Enjoy your evening. She walked away, and Callister's jaw was tight. Ex-girlfriend, I ventured. Ex-business partner. Ex-something. It's complicated. She seems delightful. That surprised a short laugh out of him. She's ruthless, brilliant, and completely self-serving. We worked together 5 years ago. It didn't end well. What happened? He was quiet for a moment. Then, she tried to steal a deal out from under me, used information I'd shared in confidence to undercut my bid on a major acquisition. I won anyway, but it taught me a lesson about trust. That you shouldn't. That it's expensive. He drained his whiskey. Come on, dinner's starting. We found our table, me, Callister, Fiona, and several major clients. The meal was exquisite, the conversation stimulating, and throughout it all, Callister kept drawing me into discussions, asking my opinion, treating me like an equal rather than a subordinate. It was intoxicating and terrifying, because this version of Callister Lyons, attentive, respectful, almost warm, was far more dangerous than the cold, demanding boss I'd worked under for 2 years. That boss I could resent. This one was making me remember all the reasons I'd found him compelling in the first place. After dinner, as couples moved to the dance floor, Callister stood and offered his hand. Dance with me. I don't really dance. Neither do I. We'll improvise. I let him lead me to the floor, his hand settling on my waist as mine found his shoulder. The band was playing something slow and jazzy, and we moved together with surprising ease. You're full of surprises tonight, I said. In what way? Compliments, protection, dancing. Is this all an elaborate scheme to make me less productive through confusion? He smiled. A real smile, not the controlled corporate version. No scheme, just enjoying an evening with someone whose company I appreciate. You appreciate my company. Surprising, isn't it? His hand tightened slightly at my waist. You're one of the few people who's not afraid to tell me when I'm being an ass. You're paying me to be here. I could argue that fear is built into the power dynamic. You weren't afraid in my office when you quit. You stood there and told me exactly what you thought of me. No fear at all. His eyes held mine. I respected that. You had a funny way of showing respect. I know, I'm working on that. We danced in silence for a moment. The ballroom lights cast everything in gold, and this close, I could see the details most people missed. The fine lines around his eyes that suggested he smiled more than his reputation implied, the small scar above his left eyebrow, the way his jaw clenched when he was thinking deeply about something. Why did you really buy Apex? I asked quietly. I told you. The truth, not the business justification. He was quiet for several measures of music. Then, because I was tired of only buying companies where I could maintain total control. Apex had good leadership, good culture. I wanted to try something different, partnering rather than dominating. That must be uncomfortable for you. Terrifying, actually. He spun me slightly, and I followed instinctively. But necessary. I'm learning that the way I've been building my empire isn't sustainable. At some point, you run out of people willing to work for you. Is this about me leaving? Partially. Also about realizing that I'm 34, successful beyond what I'd dreamed, and I have no one to share it with because I've spent a decade treating relationships like liabilities. The honesty stunned me. Callister, sorry, Too much whiskey, apparently. He stepped back as the song ended. I should circulate. Thank you for the dance. He walked away before I could respond, disappearing into the crowd of guests. I stood there on the edge of the dance floor, my heart doing complicated things in my chest, and realized with creeping horror that I was in trouble. Because I was starting to see Callister Lyons not as my impossible boss, but as a man. A complicated, damaged, brilliant man who was trying, however clumsily, to be better. And that was the most dangerous thing of all. I was gathering my clutch to leave when Vivienne appeared beside me. He's good at that, you know, she said conversationally. At what? Making you feel special, making you think you're different from everyone else he's used. Her smile was poison sweet. I believed it too once. Then I learned that Callister Lyons doesn't do relationships. He does acquisitions. And once he's acquired you, once you're fully his, he loses interest. I'm not dating him? No, not yet. But you will be. I can see it already. The way he looks at you. The way you look at him. She leaned closer. Just remember, he's called the Heartbreak King for a reason. And when it ends, because it will end, you'll be just another asset he's depreciated and moved on from. She walked away, leaving me standing there with her words echoing in my head. I left the gala shortly after, took a car home, and spent the ride trying not to think about everything that had just happened. I failed spectacularly. If you're reading this and you've ever been underestimated, overlooked, or told you weren't enough, this is your reminder that their inability to see your value was never about your worth. It was about their limited vision. Keep rising, keep proving them wrong. Not for them, but for you. Monday morning arrived with a crisis. I got to the office at 7:30 a.m. to find 3 urgent messages from Fiona, 2 from Callister, and a general panic in the air. The healthcare tech presentation, the one I'd spent weeks perfecting, the one that was supposed to go to potential investors tomorrow, had vanished from the shared drive. Not just vanished, deleted, along with all my backup files and research notes. How is this possible? Fiona was nearly hyperventilating in my office. We have redundancies, multiple save points. How could everything just disappear? I was trying very hard not to panic. It is looking into it. They're working on recovery now, but the presentation is tomorrow. Even if they find something, we might not have time to... I'll rebuild it. My voice was calmer than I felt. I have the analysis memorized. I can reconstruct the slides from... From what? All your research is gone too. Not all of it. I'd been paranoid about losing work ever since a computer crash in grad school. I had a personal external drive at home with old versions. Not current, but close enough to build from. I can do this, I told Fiona. Tell Callister I'll have something ready by tomorrow morning. Are you sure? I'm sure. She left, still looking worried. I sat at my desk, took 3 deep breaths, and started making a list of what I needed to recreate. Callister appeared in my doorway at 9 a.m. I heard. I'm handling it. This is not my fault, I know, but it's my project, so I'm fixing it. I didn't look up from my rapidly filling notepad. Unless you're here to fire me? Why would I fire you for someone else's IT failure? Because something always has to be someone's fault, and I'm the convenient target. He was quiet for a moment. That's not how I operate, not anymore. Right, your new leaf. I forgot. Are you angry at me? I'm angry at the universe. You're just standing in front of me. I finally looked up. I need to work. Was there something specific you needed? What can I do to help? The question surprised me. Nothing, unless you can magically restore deleted files. I've got IT pulling security logs to see who accessed your drive. If someone did this deliberately, why would anyone do this deliberately? His expression was grim. There are always people who benefit from others failing. We'll find out who. He left, and I got to work. The next 18 hours were brutal. I went home, grabbed my external drive, and returned to the office. I rebuilt the presentation from memory and old notes, working through the night with nothing but coffee and determination. By 6 a.m., I had something presentable. Not perfect, not as polished as the original, but solid. The presentation was at 10 a.m. I went home, showered, changed, and made it back by 9:30. Fiona looked relieved. Callister looked concerned. "Did you sleep at all?" he asked. "I'll sleep when I'm dead." "That might be sooner than planned if you keep this up." The meeting room filled with investors, serious people with serious money who were considering a serious investment in Apex's healthcare tech initiative. I launched into the presentation, running on fumes and sheer willpower. It went fine. Not brilliant, not terrible. Fine. Callister stepped in halfway through to field some questions, covering for the places where my exhaustion showed. When it ended, the investors seemed cautiously interested, but requested more detailed financials before committing. "We'll have those to you within a week," Callister assured them. After they left, I slumped in my chair. Fiona patted my shoulder. "You did amazingly given the circumstances." "I did adequate. There's a difference." Callister lingered after everyone else left. "Go home. Sleep. We'll debrief tomorrow." "I need to start on those financials they requested." "Home. Sleep. That's an order." I was too tired to argue. I slept for 14 hours straight. When I woke Tuesday evening, my phone had 6 messages. 3 from Priya checking if I was alive, 2 from Fiona about work, and 1 from Callister. "It found something. Come to my office when you're back." I made it in Wednesday morning at 8 a.m. Callister was at his desk, his expression dark. "What did IT find?" I asked. "The deletion was deliberate. Someone with your access credentials logged in Saturday night and systematically removed every file related to the healthcare tech project." My stomach dropped. "Someone used my credentials? Like they hacked? Or they had your password?" He pulled up a screen showing the security logs. "The access came from within the building. Someone here." "That's insane. Why would anyone—" "Like I said, some people benefit from others failing." He closed his laptop. "It is investigating further, but I wanted you to know that I know this wasn't your fault or your negligence. Someone sabotaged you, and I will find out who." The protective edge in his voice did something warm and complicated to my chest. "Why would anyone target me specifically?" "You're leading a major initiative. You have my attention. You're new enough that you haven't built strong alliances here." He leaned back. "Or someone has a more personal reason." Over the next week, I became paranoid. I changed all my passwords, kept my files on encrypted drives, and stopped trusting anyone completely. The project continued. I rebuilt everything from scratch, this time with multiple redundancies, but the joy of the work was gone, replaced by constant vigilance. Priya noticed. "You're different." "Someone sabotaged my work. Different seems appropriate." "But you're not letting anyone in anymore. You used to have lunch with the team. Now you eat at your desk." "I'm busy." "You're scared." She said it gently. "I get it. But whoever did this, they're winning if they make you isolate yourself." She was right, but knowing that didn't make it easier to trust. The presentation to investors happened again, this time with the full financial analysis they'd requested. It went perfectly. They committed to the investment, $40 million for the healthcare tech initiative. It should have felt like a victory. Instead, it felt like surviving. The sabotage investigation hit a wall. IT traced the access to a computer in one of the hot desking areas. Anyone could have used it. Security footage showed someone with their face conveniently obscured by a hoodie. Dead end. Whoever did this knew what they were doing, the IT director told us. Professional level, not some random act of vandalism. Callister's jaw was tight. Keep looking. The $40 million investment should have been cause for celebration. Instead, Apex's board called an emergency meeting, and from the tension in Fiona's face, I knew it wasn't good news. The meeting was Friday afternoon. I wasn't invited, but I heard about it later from Priya, who'd overheard the executives talking. Someone on the board is questioning Callister's judgment, she whispered. Claiming the sabotage proves there are internal issues he's not addressing. They want to delay the healthcare tech rollout until things stabilize. That's insane. We just secured funding. I know, but apparently there's a faction that never wanted Callister to acquire Apex in the first place. They're using this as ammunition. Politics. Of course. Callister was in back-to-back meetings all day. I didn't see him until 7 p.m., when he appeared at my desk looking exhausted. Walk with me. Not a request. We ended up on the building's rooftop terrace, an amenity I'd never used. The city spread out below us, lights beginning to twinkle as dusk settled in. The board wants to put the healthcare initiative on hold, he said, without preamble. For how long? Indefinitely, until we address internal security concerns. His voice was bitter. It's bullshit. This is about power. There are 2 board members who resent that I bought Apex without their input. They're using the sabotage as an excuse to undermine my authority. Can they do that? They can try. I have controlling interest, but board dynamics matter, especially with investors watching. He gripped the railing. I need to prove the initiative is sound and the sabotage was isolated, which means I need to find whoever did it. It hasn't found anything. It is looking at technology. I'm looking at motivation. He turned to face me. Who at Apex would benefit from the healthcare initiative failing? I thought about it. No one really. It's bringing in money, prestige, new opportunities. Everyone benefits. Unless someone doesn't want Apex to succeed under my leadership. His eyes were sharp. Personal grudge. Old loyalty to previous ownership. Someone who preferred the way things were. You think someone on the team did this deliberately to make you look bad? I think people are complicated, and threatened people do desperate things. He ran a hand through his hair. I need your help. With what? Investigation. You know the team better than I do. You've been working with them while I've been handling the larger strategy. Who seems off? Who's been asking too many questions? Who had motive and opportunity? You want me to spy on my co-workers? I want you to pay attention. There's a difference. I wanted to refuse. This felt like crossing a line from colleague to corporate spy. But someone had sabotaged my work, and I wanted to know who. I'll think about it, I said finally. Over the next week, I did pay attention, and I started noticing things, like how Justin Merrick, one of the senior project managers, always seemed to be near my desk when I was discussing sensitive work, or how Claudia from finance asked detailed questions about my access levels and security protocols, or how David Chen, who'd been at Apex for 5 years, made bitter comments about new ownership changing everything. I mentioned these observations to Callister during our weekly check-in. "Merrick is territorial," Callister said thoughtfully. "He was being considered for VP before I acquired the company. That promotion's on hold now." "So he has motive." "Motive, yes, but enough to commit sabotage? That's a career-ending move if he's caught. Unless he thinks he won't be caught." Callister made a note. "I'll have someone look deeper into his background. What about Chen?" "Chen is bitter, but open about it. I don't think he's sneaky enough to do this." "And Claudia?" "I'm less sure about her. She's very interested in security systems. Could be innocent curiosity or she's identifying vulnerabilities." He closed his notebook. "Good work. Keep watching, but be careful. If someone's willing to sabotage a project, they might be willing to take more direct action if they think they're being investigated." The warning sent a chill down my spine. 2 days later, everything came to a head. I was working late, had become my habit since the sabotage, not trusting work left in the office overnight. When I heard voices from the conference room down the hall, Callister and someone else, their voices raised in argument. I should have left, should have minded my own business. Instead, I crept closer. "Can't keep making unilateral decisions," someone was saying. Male voice, older. "The board approved the acquisition with the understanding that you'd maintain some continuity. Instead, you've brought in your own people, changed the culture, and pushed initiatives that weren't properly vetted." "Vetted by whom? A board that's been content with mediocre growth for the past 3 years?" That was Callister, his voice cold. "I bought Apex to transform it, not maintain the status quo." "You bought Apex to add to your portfolio. That doesn't give you the right to—" "I have controlling interest. That gives me every right." "Not if the board revolts. Not if we go to the investors and tell them you're mismanaging." "Careful, William. That sounds like a threat." A pause. "It's a warning. Back off the healthcare initiative. Let things settle, or there will be consequences." "Get out of my office." I heard footsteps approaching and barely made it back to my desk before a man emerged. Mid-50s, expensive suit, face red with anger. He stormed past without noticing me. I pulled up Apex's org chart and found him. William Hendricks, board member and former interim CEO before Callister's acquisition. Ah, that explained a lot. Callister appeared in my doorway a few minutes later. "How much did you hear?" "Enough to know someone on your board is actively working against you." "Hendricks has been a problem since day one." He leaned against the doorframe, looking tired. "He thought he'd be made permanent CEO. When I bought the company instead, he took it personally." "Is he your saboteur?" "Too obvious. Hendricks is a boardroom politician, not a direct actor. If he's behind this, he's using someone else's hands." Callister rubbed his eyes. "I need proof. Without it, he'll keep undermining me, and eventually the board will force a vote I'm not sure I'll win." "What happens if you lose a board vote?" "Best case, they force me to sell Apex back to them at a loss. Worst case, they structure it, so I'm removed from all decision-making and Apex becomes a liability instead of an asset." He met my eyes. "Either way, the healthcare initiative dies, and probably your job with it." "My job? You're too associated with my agenda now. If Hendricks wins, he'll clean house. You, Fiona, anyone he sees as loyal to me rather than the old Apex. He straightened. Which is why I need to win this. And I need your help. What kind of help? The board meeting is in 2 weeks. I need evidence that the healthcare initiative is sound and that the sabotage was an isolated incident that we've addressed. That means I need to know who did it and prove it definitively before that meeting. That's not much time. No, it's not. He looked at me intently. Are you in? Because if you help me with this, Hendricks will know. He'll target you too. I should have said no, should have protected myself, stayed neutral, avoided the corporate warfare. But Callister was looking at me like I was the only person he trusted. And that mattered more than it should have. I'm in, I said. The trap was Callister's idea. We need to create an opportunity too good for the saboteur to resist, he explained. Something that looks valuable enough to target but is actually bait. And then we catch them in the act. Exactly. We set it up carefully. A new confidential project file saved to my drive, supposedly containing the final strategy for the healthcare initiative's launch. Security time-stamped, access logged, and monitored by IT in real time. Then we waited. For 3 days, nothing happened. I was starting to think whoever did it was too smart to fall for the trap. Then, on Thursday night at 11:47 p.m., the alarm went off. Callister called me. Someone's accessing the bait file. Get here, now. I broke at least 3 traffic laws getting to the office. Callister was in the security office with 2 IT specialists, watching live as someone moved through my supposedly secure files. Can you trace it? He asked. Working on it. Got it. Computer ID 847B. That's Conference Room C. We ran. Conference Room C was dark when we arrived, but the computer was still on. My files displayed on the screen. Whoever had been here had left in a hurry. Coffee still warm, chair pushed back. Check the security footage, Callister ordered. 5 minutes later, we had our answer. The face on the security camera was familiar. Too familiar. Justin Merrick. My stomach sank. Justin was the senior project manager I'd had suspicions about, but I'd half convinced myself I was being paranoid. Why? I asked the empty room. Callister was already on his phone. I need background on Justin Merrick. Everything. Personal, professional, financial. I want to know why he'd risk his career over this. The answer came back within an hour. Merrick had been negotiating with Hendricks to become VP if Hendricks succeeded in pushing Callister out. The healthcare initiative's success made Callister look good, which made Hendricks's plan harder. Merrick had a direct financial interest in the initiative failing. We have him, Callister said. Security footage, access logs, motive, more than enough. So what now? Now we decide how to handle it. He looked at me. This goes to the police. It's criminal charges. Goes to just the board. It's internal discipline. Your call. He sabotaged your work. I thought about it. About the nights I'd spent rebuilding everything. About the stress and paranoia. About how close this had come to destroying something I'd worked so hard on. Board first, I said. Give him a chance to explain himself. Then if he doesn't cooperate, police. Callister looked surprised. You're being generous. I'm being strategic. If we go straight to police, it becomes a scandal. Press, distraction. But if we handle it internally, we control the narrative. Show the board we're addressing problems professionally. He smiled, a real smile. See, this is why I need you around. Smarter than me about half the time. Only half? I'm being generous. The confrontation happened Friday morning. Callister, Fiona, Hendricks, two other board members, Merrick and me in the main conference room. Callister laid it out clinically. The evidence, the timeline, the motive. Merrick went pale, then red, then pale again. This is circumstantial, he tried. This is documented proof. Callister pulled up the security footage, the access logs, the financial records showing his communications with Hendricks. You sabotaged company property, endangered a major initiative, and did it in exchange for a promised promotion. That's not circumstantial. That's career suicide. Hendricks was smart enough to look horrified. I had no knowledge of this. Didn't you? Callister turned to him. You promised Merrick a VP position if I was removed. Don't insult our intelligence by pretending you didn't know what that would take. I promised him a promotion in the event of restructuring. That's not the same as... It's exactly the same, and this board knows it. Callister looked at each board member in turn. William Hendricks has been working to undermine this company's progress since the day I acquired it. He's put his personal ambition above Apex's interests, and he's corrupted a team member to do it. I want him removed from the board. Today. The vote was 4-1. Hendricks was out. Merrick was fired and escorted from the building within an hour. No criminal charges. Callister wanted it contained, but his reputation in Tarrington's business community was effectively destroyed. It should have felt like victory. Instead, I felt hollow. Why? I asked Callister after everyone else had left. Why what? Why does it still feel bad when we won? He was quiet for a moment. Because winning like this isn't really winning. It's just stopping someone from making you lose. He looked tired. But that's corporate life. You don't win. You just survive and call it success. That was possibly the saddest thing I'd ever heard him say. Is it worth it? I asked. All of this. The battles, the politics, the constant warfare. Some days I'm not sure anymore. He met my eyes. But then I look at what we've built, what we're building, and I think maybe it is, or maybe I just don't know how to do anything else. I understood that feeling, the trap of competence, being so good at something that walking away felt like waste, even when the cost was your peace. Thank you, he said abruptly, for helping, for trusting me, for... He trailed off, seeming to search for words. For still being here? Where else would I go? You've got me locked in for a year, remember? You could have made this much harder. Could have let Hendricks win just to spite me. He moved closer. But you didn't. Why? The question hung between us, and I realized I didn't have a good answer. Or rather, I had an answer I wasn't ready to admit. Because despite everything, despite the impossible standards and the complicated history and the fact that he was still my boss, I believed in what Callister was trying to build. And maybe, somewhere along the way, I'd started believing in him too. Because someone has to keep you from becoming the villain in your own story, I said finally. Something shifted in his expression. And you've appointed yourself to that role? Someone has to do it. Why you? Because I'm the only one who's not afraid to tell you the truth. We stood there, in the empty conference room, the city visible through the windows behind him, and something hummed in the air between us that had nothing to do with corporate politics and everything to do with the fact that we were standing too close, looking at each other too long. I should go, I said, but I didn't move. You should, he agreed, also not moving. Then my phone buzzed, shattering the moment. Work email. I looked down, grateful for the interruption and hating it at the same time. I have a call, I said. Right, of course. He stepped back, and the distance felt like miles. Good work today. Really. You saved this company. Possibly saved me too. I left before I could do something stupid, like ask what he'd meant by that. If you've ever fought for something only to wonder if winning was worth the cost, you're not alone. Sometimes the hardest battles are the ones where victory leaves you questioning everything. But keep fighting, keep rising, because you're stronger than you know, and every battle makes you stronger still. Subscribe for more stories of resilience and triumph from Mr. Douglas. With Hendricks gone and Merrick fired, Apex stabilized. The board was suddenly cooperative, the healthcare initiative moved forward, and for 2 weeks, everything was almost normal. Which meant, of course, that something had to go wrong. It started with a phone call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Hello? Is this the analyst working on the Lyons Capital Healthcare project? A woman's voice, professional, but with an edge. Who's asking? Someone who knows what Callister Lyons really bought Apex for. And it wasn't the technology portfolio. My blood went cold. I'm hanging up. He bought it because his ex-partner owns the competing company. Vivienne Hart. She's developing the same technology you are. He bought Apex to steal her research and get revenge for what she did 5 years ago. You're not working on innovation. You're working on corporate espionage. The line went dead. I sat there, phone in hand, mind racing. It couldn't be true, could it? But pieces started clicking together. The gala, Vivienne's appearance, the tension between them, Callister's mysterious comment about the acquisition being different for him. What if it wasn't different at all? What if it was just another move in a longer game? I needed to know the truth. I spent the weekend doing research. Vivienne Hart's company, Nexus Biotech, was indeed developing healthcare technology, similar to what we were doing at Apex. Very similar, too similar. I dug deeper, found patents that were filed around the same time as Apex's research started, found connections between some of Apex's former researchers and Nexus employees, found enough smoke to suggest there might be fire. Monday morning, I went to Fiona. Did Callister ever explain why he bought Apex specifically? I asked carefully. Technology portfolio, growth potential, strong team. She looked up from her computer. Why? Did he mention Nexus Biotech or Vivienne Hart? Her expression shifted. What did you hear? Is it true that we're developing the same technology as Nexus? Fiona was quiet for a long moment. It's complicated. Uncomplicate it. Apex and Nexus both licensed technology from the same university research lab 5 years ago. They've been on parallel development tracks since then. It's not unusual in the industry. Multiple companies often work on similar innovations. She met my eyes. But yes, Callister is aware of the overlap. And Vivienne? They have history. I don't know details. But when Callister bought Apex, one of his stated goals was to beat Nexus to market. Corporate competition. That's not unusual either. But revenge is. Is that what you think this is? I didn't know what I thought, but I needed to hear it from Callister himself. I found him in his office, reviewing what looked like patent filings. We need to talk, he looked up. About? Vivienne Hart, Nexus Biotech, and why you really bought this company. His expression shuttered. Who have you been talking to? Does it matter? Is it true? Is what true? That you bought Apex to get revenge on Vivienne for what happened 5 years ago? He set down the documents carefully. Where did you hear that? Answer the question. It's not that simple. Yes or no? Did you buy this company as part of some vendetta against your ex? She's not my ex. She was my business partner. And yes, I'm aware that Apex and Nexus are in competition. But that's not why I bought the company. Then why? Because Apex had better technology and a better team. Because the acquisition made strategic sense. Because... He stopped, jaw tight. Because what? Because I'm tired of Vivienne winning by playing dirty. 5 years ago, she stole a deal from me using confidential information. She's built her entire company on that foundation. And yes, beating her to market with this technology would be satisfying. But that's not the primary goal. Just a happy bonus. Is that so wrong, to want to win against someone who's actively trying to destroy you? No, but using Apex, using me, as pawns in your personal war, that's wrong. I'm not using anyone. This is legitimate business competition. With very personal motivations. He stood, moving around the desk. You're right, it is personal. Vivienne has spent 5 years trying to undermine everything I build. She spreads rumors, poaches clients, uses every advantage, ethical or not. So yes, I'm motivated to beat her. But the work you're doing, that's real. The healthcare initiative, that matters regardless of who it's competing against. I wanted to believe him, but trust, once cracked, was hard to rebuild. Did you know I'd be here when you bought Apex? No, I swear, that was coincidence. But you kept me here, promoted me, put me in charge of the exact project that competes with Vivienne. Because you're brilliant at what you do. He took a step closer. Not because of Vivienne, because of you. I don't know if I believe that. Something that looked like pain crossed his face. What do I have to do to prove it? Be honest. About everything. No more games. No more secrets. Then ask me anything. I'll answer honestly. I thought about it. Why did you really compliment me at the gala? Because you deserved it. Why did you change how you treat me after I quit? Because losing you made me realize I'd been treating people like problems to solve instead of humans to value. Do you have feelings for me beyond professional respect? The question hung in the air. I watched him process it, saw the calculation behind his eyes as he decided how to answer. Yes, he said, finally. I do. Which is why I've been trying very hard to remain professional. To give you space, to let you decide how you want this, us, to develop, if at all. My heart was doing acrobatics. That's complicated. That's an understatement. He smiled slightly. But you asked for honesty. I did. I took a breath. I need time to think about all of this. Take whatever time you need. I left his office with my head spinning and my heart uncertain. The revelation about Vivienne and Nexus put everything in a new light. I spent the next week doing deep research, not just on the technology, but on the business landscape. And what I found was enlightening. Nexus Biotech's patents were shaky. They'd filed them first, but the actual innovation was minimal, mostly derivative of the university research with minor modifications. Apex's approach, by contrast, was genuinely innovative. We'd taken the base technology and developed something new. In other words, Callister was right. We had the better product. But Vivienne had the better reputation and deeper investor connections. If she launched first, even with inferior technology, she'd dominate the market through sheer force of capital and PR, which meant we needed to launch first and launch perfectly. I pulled together a presentation outlining exactly how we could accelerate development and beat Nexus to market, not through shortcuts or corner cutting, but through strategic resource allocation and parallel development streams. I presented it to Callister in his office. "This is ambitious," he said after reviewing my proposal. "This is necessary. Vivienne isn't going to wait for us to be ready. She's going to launch as soon as she can. Quality be damned. We need to beat her there." "You sound like you're taking this personally." "I am, because whether you bought Apex for the right reasons or not, we've built something good here, and I'll be damned if I let someone steal our thunder because of old grudges." He looked at me for a long moment. "You've changed." "How?" "You used to avoid conflict. Now you're running toward it." "I learned from the best." I met his eyes. "So, do we do this or not?" "We do this." He stood, gathering the materials. "I'll present this to the board tomorrow. They'll approve it. After the Hendricks situation, they're not going to question my judgment on strategy. We launch in 3 months. 3 months is aggressive. 3 months is necessary. You said so yourself." He was right. I had said that. Now I just had to make sure we could actually deliver. The next 12 weeks were a controlled sprint. Every department working in coordination, every timeline compressed, every resource pushed to maximum efficiency. I was everywhere: coordination meetings, technical reviews, strategy sessions, often working 14-hour days. But this time it felt different. I wasn't grinding myself down for approval. I was pushing because I believed in what we were building. And Callister was right there with me. Not micromanaging, but supporting. When I needed resources, he found them. When obstacles appeared, he cleared them. When I was running on fumes at 10 p.m., he was there too, working just as hard. We were a team. Maybe for the first time, we were actually a team. 6 weeks in, something shifted between us. It was late, nearly midnight. Most of the office had gone home. Callister and I were in the conference room, reviewing the final technical specifications before they went to the engineers. "This section here," he pointed to the screen, "can we simplify the user interface without losing functionality?" "Probably. I'll have the UX team look at it." "Good." He leaned back, rubbing his eyes. "You know, when I bought this company, I didn't think I'd still be in the weeds like this." "You love the weeds." "I love the challenge. There's a difference." He looked at me. "Thank you." "For what?" "For making this work. For believing in it even when you had reasons to doubt me." He paused. "For staying." "Where would I go? You have me locked in for a year, remember? You could have made this miserable, could have done the minimum and counted down the days, but you've given this everything." His voice softened. "Given me more than I deserved after how I treated you at Lyons Capital. You're different now, because you showed me I needed to be." We sat there in the quiet office, the city lights glowing through the windows, and I felt the last of my resistance crumbling. "Callister, I know." He stood. "It's late. You should go home." "We should go home." "I have a few more hours of work." "No, we're going home. Both of us. That's an order from your lead analyst." He smiled, and it was genuine. "When did you start giving me orders?" "When you started actually listening to me." We left together, taking the elevator down in comfortable silence. In the parking garage, he walked me to my car. "Drive safe," he said. "You too." I was unlocking my door when he spoke again. "This launch, when it's done, when we've beaten Vivienne and proven Apex was worth the investment." He paused. "Would you have dinner with me? Not as your boss, just as someone who'd like to get to know you outside of spreadsheets and strategy sessions." My heart stuttered. "Is that a good idea?" "Probably not, but I'm tired of only making good decisions." I looked at him, really looked at the man who'd pushed me to my limits and then learned to respect them, who'd treated me like a tool and then learned to see me as a person, who was trying, despite everything, to be better. "Ask me again when the launch is done," I said, "if we're both still standing." "Deal." 8 weeks, that's all we had left, and then everything would change. The launch was scheduled for November 15th, a full media event, major healthcare investors, press coverage. We'd beaten Nexus to market by 3 weeks. They'd announced their launch date just days after we'd announced ours, but they were too late to beat us there. Vivienne would be furious. The week before launch, everything came together. Final technical reviews passed, marketing materials approved, investor presentations polished to perfection. We were ready. Then, 5 days before launch, the email arrived. It came to my personal email, sent from an anonymous address. "You should know what kind of man you're working for. See attached." The attachment was a document, correspondence between Callister and his attorneys from 5 years ago, discussing Vivienne's betrayal and strategizing ways to neutralize her business advantage. On its own, it could have been innocent. Legal strategy, normal competitive analysis. But there was one line that made my blood run cold. "If we can't beat her legitimately, we'll need to consider alternative approaches to ensure her company fails." I read it 3 times. Then I called Callister. "We need to talk, now." He heard something in my voice. "I'll come to you. Where are you?" "My apartment. I'm sending you the address." He arrived 20 minutes later, still in his suit from work. I opened the door and held out my phone with the email displayed. His face went white. "Where did you get this?" "Anonymous email. Is it real?" "It's out of context." "Is it real?" He closed his eyes. "Yes, but not how it looks." "Then explain how it looks." He came inside, and I closed the door. He paced my small living room like a caged animal. 5 years ago, Vivienne and I were partners. We'd built a consulting firm together. Small, but growing. We were friends. I trusted her. He stopped pacing. Then I found out she'd been talking to our biggest client behind my back, offering to take them on privately if they'd leave our firm. She was planning to gut the company and leave me with nothing. "So you went to war?" "I went to lawyers, asked them how to protect myself, how to ensure that if she was going to betray me, I'd at least survive it." He gestured to my phone. That email was part of that discussion. The alternative approaches meant finding other clients, diversifying revenue, building protections into our contracts. Not corporate sabotage or anything illegal. "But it sounds like you were planning to destroy her." "I was planning to survive her destroying me. There's a difference." He met my eyes. "I won't apologize for protecting myself, but I never crossed legal or ethical lines. Everything I've built since then has been legitimate." I wanted to believe him, but doubt had been planted, and it was growing roots. "Who sent this?" I asked. "Who do you think?" "Vivienne, of course." "She's trying to turn you against me," Callister continued, right before the launch. Classic strategy. She can't beat us on product, so she's trying to divide us from within. Or she's showing me who you really are. His jaw tightened. After everything we've been through, after I've changed, tried to be better, been honest with you, you still think I'm the villain? I think you're someone who's very good at making people believe what you want them to believe. The words hit him like a physical blow. I watched him process them, saw hurt and anger war across his face. If that's what you think of me, he said quietly, then maybe we were never on the same side at all. He left. I stood in my apartment, phone in hand, and wondered if I'd just made the biggest mistake of my life. The next 3 days were hell. I went to work, did my job, and avoided Callister as much as possible. He did the same. The team noticed. How could they not? But no one said anything. 2 days before launch, Priya cornered me in the break room. What happened? Nothing. That's a lie. You and Callister were finally working like a real team. Now you can barely look at each other. So what happened? I showed her the email. She read it twice. And you believe this? I don't know what to believe. Then let me make it simple. She handed back my phone. Vivienne Hart is a shark. Everyone in this industry knows it. She's brilliant, ruthless, and has destroyed multiple competitors through tactics that were legal but definitely not ethical. Does it make sense that she'd suddenly develop a conscience and warn you about Callister? Maybe she's trying to sabotage the launch by creating exactly this situation. Division, doubt, distraction, right when we need to be most focused. Priya crossed her arms. I've known Callister for 6 months. You've known him for over 2 years. Which version of him do you believe? The man he's been for the last 6 months, or the worst interpretation of an email from 5 years ago? She had a point. Talk to him, Priya said. Not as your boss, as a person. Get the full story. Then decide. I found Callister in his office at 8 p.m., staring at his computer without really seeing it. Can we talk? He looked up, and his expression was carefully neutral. About? The email. I want to hear the full story, not the defensive version, the real one. He gestured to a chair. I sat. 5 years ago, he began, I was different, younger, less experienced, and definitely more naive about people. When Vivienne and I started our firm, I thought we were building something lasting. I trusted her completely. She was brilliant, charismatic, and seemed committed to our vision. What happened? I found emails. She'd been meeting with our 3 biggest clients for months, telling them she was planning to leave and start her own firm. She'd offered to bring them with her at reduced rates, essentially using our client relationships and her knowledge of their needs to steal them. Did you confront her? Of course. She didn't deny it. Said I was holding her back, that she could do better on her own, that business was business. He laughed bitterly. I asked why she didn't just talk to me about dissolving the partnership if she was unhappy. She said because this way was more profitable. That's cold. That's Vivienne. Everything is strategy. People are assets or obstacles. He looked at me. Sound familiar? That's who I learned it from. And then I spent 5 years becoming her. Cold, strategic, treating people like tools, until you quit and made me realize what I'd become. The email was me in panic mode. I'd just discovered her plan. Our lawyers were trying to help me salvage the company. When they asked about alternative approaches, they meant legal strategies to prevent client poaching, non-compete clauses, contractual protections, nothing illegal or even unethical by business standards. But the way it's phrased sounds worse than it was. I know. That's why Vivienne sent it to you. She dug through old records, probably illegally, to find something that could be misinterpreted. He leaned forward. But ask yourself, if I was really the villain she's painting me as, would I have changed how I treat people? Would I have admitted my mistakes to you? Would I have given you so much autonomy and trust? I thought about it, about the past 6 months, about how he'd supported me, defended me, trusted my judgment, about how he'd actually changed his behavior based on my criticism. No, I said finally, you wouldn't have. So do you believe me, or her? I believe you. The words came easier than I expected. I'm sorry I doubted you. You had reason to doubt. Vivienne is very good at creating doubt. He stood. But this is exactly what she wanted. To divide us right before launch, make us question each other, weaken the team from within. What do we do about it? We launch, perfectly, and we show her that her tricks don't work anymore. He moved closer. But I need to know you're with me, not just professionally, actually with me, because if we're divided, she wins. I'm with you, completely, completely. Something in his expression softened. Good, because I need you, not just for the launch, for everything after. The air between us shifted, charged with something that had been building for months. Callister, I know. We should wait until after the launch. He smiled slightly. But we're both terrible at waiting, aren't we? Terrible. He reached out, his hand cupping my face with surprising gentleness. Tell me to stop. Don't stop. He kissed me. Finally. After months of tension and denial and professional boundaries, he kissed me, and it was everything I hadn't let myself imagine. Intense and tender and completely consuming. When we finally broke apart, he rested his forehead against mine. That was probably a terrible idea, he murmured. Definitely a terrible idea. Should we do it again? Absolutely. We did. Later, much later, we sat in his office, the city lights glowing beyond the windows, and planned how to handle Vivienne. She's going to try something else, I said. That email was just the opening move. Agreed, which means we need to be ready for whatever comes next. What came next arrived the following morning. A press release from Nexus Biotech claiming that Apex's healthcare technology infringed on their patents and threatening legal action. It was bullshit. We'd done extensive patent analysis. Our technology was completely distinct from theirs, but the accusation alone, released one day before our launch, was designed to create doubt. Callister called an emergency meeting. This is a bluff, he told the team. Vivienne's trying to scare our investors and create negative press. We're not backing down. But if there's any legitimacy to the claim, Fiona started, there isn't. I've had 3 different law firms review our patents. We're clean. He looked around the room. Here's what we do. We release our own statement. Something short, factual, and confident. We're aware of Nexus's claims and have thoroughly reviewed our patent portfolio. We're confident in the originality of our innovation and look forward to a successful launch tomorrow. That's it? Someone asked. That's it. No defensiveness, no detailed rebuttals, just confidence. He turned to me. Can you draft that statement and get it to our PR team within the hour? Done. The statement went out by noon. By 2 p.m., several industry analysts had published pieces noting that Nexus's timing seemed strategic rather than substantive. By 5 p.m., Vivienne's threat had been neutralized, but she wasn't done. That evening, as the team was doing final preparations for tomorrow's launch, I got another email. Tomorrow's launch is going to be very interesting. I wonder how your investors will react when they learn about the prototype failure last month that you conveniently forgot to disclose. My blood ran cold. There had been a prototype failure, a minor one, a sensor calibration issue that we'd fixed within 48 hours and had disclosed in all our technical documentation. It wasn't a secret. It wasn't even significant. But if Vivienne spun it right, it could sound like we'd been hiding critical flaws. I forwarded the email to Callister. His response was immediate. My office, now. When I got there, he was on the phone with our lawyers, pacing like a predator. I don't care if it's after hours. I need someone to review our disclosure documentation and confirm we properly reported the September prototype issue. Yes, now. Call me back in 20 minutes. He hung up and looked at me. She's trying to create a scandal where none exists. What if she manufactures evidence? Then we counter with our actual documentation. But she won't. She's bluffing, trying to make us panic and make mistakes. He pulled me close. But we're not going to panic. We're going to launch tomorrow perfectly and show her that she can't touch us anymore. You sound very confident. I'm confident in us, in the work we've done, in the fact that we've built something real while she's been playing games. He kissed my forehead. Go home. Get sleep. Tomorrow we change everything. Launch day arrived with perfect weather and perfect timing. The event was held at the Ashbourne Hotel, same place as the gala months ago, but this time I wasn't nervous. I belonged here. We all did. The ballroom was packed with investors, press, healthcare executives, and industry analysts. Callister opened with a presentation that was masterful, confident without being arrogant, visionary without being unrealistic. Then he handed it to me. Our lead analyst will walk you through the technical innovation and market strategy. I stepped up to the podium and owned it. For 20 minutes, I explained our technology, our market analysis, our competitive advantages. I addressed the patent question directly, showing how our innovation was distinct and superior. I even mentioned the September prototype issue, framing it as exactly what it was, a minor calibration problem that we'd identified and fixed as part of our rigorous testing process. By the time I finished, the room was buzzing with positive energy. During the Q&A session, someone asked about Nexus's patent claims. We've reviewed their assertions thoroughly, Callister said. We're confident in our legal position. If Nexus believes they have a legitimate case, they're welcome to pursue it through proper legal channels. But we believe their claims are without merit and simply an attempt to distract from the fact that we've beaten them to market with superior technology. It was a perfect response, confident, direct, and dismissive enough to show we weren't worried. The launch concluded with investors lined up to discuss partnerships. The press coverage was overwhelmingly positive, and Vivienne's attempts at sabotage had failed spectacularly. As the crowd dispersed, I found Callister on the balcony overlooking the hotel gardens. We did it, I said. You did it. That presentation was perfect. We're a team. We did it together. He pulled me close, and I rested my head on his shoulder. What happens now? I asked. Now, we execute. We build the company we said we'd build. We prove that this technology actually helps people. He tilted my chin up to meet his eyes. And we figure out what this is between us. What do you want it to be? Everything, if you'll let me. I kissed him, there on the balcony where anyone could see, and I didn't care. Everything sounds good. 3 months later, Apex's healthcare technology had been adopted by 4 major hospital systems. The investors were thrilled. The board was cooperative. And Nexus Biotech had quietly dropped their patent claims after their legal team apparently advised them. They had no case. Vivienne tried one more attack, a hit piece in a business journal suggesting Callister had overpaid for Apex. But by then, our success spoke for itself, and the article was largely ignored. I was in my office, now a real office with a door and a window, when Callister appeared. Come with me. Where? Just come. He led me to the rooftop terrace. The sun was setting, painting the city in gold and amber. What's this about? I asked. This? He handed me a folder. Inside was a promotion offer. Vice President of Strategic Initiatives. Significant raise. Equity stake in Apex. You're promoting me? You've earned it multiple times over. He moved closer, but there's a catch. What catch? If you accept, you'll technically be reporting to the board rather than to me directly, which means, he smiled, we won't have a direct reporting relationship anymore. I understood immediately, which makes this ethical, which makes this not a HR nightmare at least. He took my hands. I want to do this right. You, us, not sneaking around or worrying about impropriety, actually building something real. Something real sounds terrifying. Good terrifying or bad terrifying? I thought about everything that had led to this moment. The struggles, the betrayals, the gradual rebuilding of trust. The realization that sometimes the people who challenge us most are the ones who make us best. Good terrifying, I said finally. He kissed me as the sun set over Tarrington, and I thought about how far I'd come. From the analyst who felt invisible unless she was failing, to someone who'd claimed her worth and demanded it be recognized. I'd escaped my arrogant boss by quitting, and somehow, impossibly, I'd found him again. Not as the man who'd made me feel small, but as someone who'd learned to see me as I actually was. That was worth more than any promotion, though the promotion was nice too. 1 year later, I stood in a boardroom, not at Apex, but at a new company, Callister, and I had founded together. Equal partners this time, building something neither of us could have created alone. Priya was our first hire. Fiona joined as COO. We recruited a team of brilliant people who actually wanted to work with us because we'd learned the difference between demanding excellence and respecting humanity. The company was called Meridian, after that family business acquisition that had been my breaking point at Lyons Capital. We'd circled back to the family, made them a better offer, and brought them on as partners. It was profitable, ethical, and proof that you didn't have to sacrifice your values to succeed. Vivienne tried to poach 2 of our early employees. We wished them well, raised our offer, and kept them anyway. She'd finally learned we weren't playing her game anymore. And Callister, he was different. Still brilliant, still demanding, still seeing connections others missed. But he'd learned to say, thank you. To acknowledge effort, not just results. To see people as partners rather than pawns. We were different too. I'd learned that demanding respect didn't make you difficult. It made you valuable. That walking away wasn't failure. Sometimes it was the only way to find your way back on better terms. On our office wall, we'd hung a quote. Sometimes you have to leave to learn if someone will change, and sometimes they surprise you. Looking at Callister across the boardroom, my partner, my challenge, my equal, I thought about that surprise. It was the best surprise of my life. If you enjoyed this journey from underestimated to undeniable, subscribe for more stories from Mr. Douglas, where every fall becomes a rise, every ending becomes a beginning, and every impossible situation becomes a chance to prove what you're really made of. If you're with Mr. Douglas Stories, kindly comment to rate the story from a scale of 1 to 10.